And this is the 13th edition of Olly Ranks, where I'll be ranking season 13 of classic Doctor Who. So, season 13 is the second season of Tom Baker's 7 year run as the fourth Doctor, and now that we're in season 13, that means we're pretty much halfway through the classic era, so woo! And plus Terror of the Zygons, the first story of season 13, actually marks the halfway point of Doctor Who as well in terms of storylines, in terms of the stories. The gothic horror elements that Hinchcliffe actually introduced when he first debuted in season 12, but it actually has a stronger showing in this season, which and obviously the stories in season 13 actually take inspiration from old sci-fi slash horror movies, and especially with the gothic elements they had in them. So Tom Baker, Elizabeth Sladen, and Ian Marter actually all return for this season, but Ian Marter actually departs in Terror of the Zygons, but he does come back for one more story in the Android Invasion later on in the season. We also see the Brigadier Benton unit for the last time before for the last time for a very long time, and then we'll be getting more sci-fi stories after this season. So if you're not familiar with how this works, I'll be ranking all six stories of this season, and from my least favorite to my favorite of the season, and I'll be explaining the reasons why. Place is Planet of Evil. It's not a bad story at all. I would say it's really good, but it could have been 1,000 times better. The scenery of the story looked amazing, and it looked very alien for the time, and I think the acting was decent here, but it could have been better. There weren't that many memorable moments apart from when the Doctor was in the antimatter pool. And the antimatter monsters themselves, they looked really scary. Scary, and I think they were probably one of the main highlights of the story. The other villain, Salama, I think he was okay, but I think him being antagonistic towards the Doctor and Sarah pretty much ran its course. It was very early in the story, and I just got really tired of it, and then they pretty much continued to part 4, especially when he even died. Right, so I think it's a good story, but I would say that more attention was paid to the production of the story rather than the actual writing. And I'll probably give this story an 8 out of 10. So in fifth place, controversial opinion, Seeds of Doom. I know it's a fan favorite. It's a really good story, I agree, but I felt like this story really should have been 6 parts long, to be honest. Pretty much the same issues with the production pretty much overshadowing the actual story and writing itself, even though I would say the writing for Seeds of Doom is actually a lot better than Planet of Evil, and a lot scarier than Planet of Evil, but it's just, I think the Nets really let the story down. The Cronod was a very great villain, and I liked how they used the Axon costume from season 8, season 8 story to close the Axos for this story by the painting it green. How the Cronod grew to pretty much King Kong level was amazing, and I really liked the shot and how the Cronod was just towering over the Chase estate, and it was a great story as well. And I think Harrison Chase was a great villain as well. He was very psychotic, and he was so psychotic even his own henchman Scorby actually turned against him and tried to help the Doctor and Sarah to defeat the Cronod before becoming paranoid, thinking that the Doctor couldn't actually save the day, and pretty much ran away and pretty much led to his own death. And this was Unit's final story until season 26, and I really wish they could have done more in the story in my eyes. I mean, yeah, they should save the day by pretty much just blowing up the Cronod, but to be honest, I mean, considering the fact that Unit has been pretty much a part of Doctor Who for a while, and they didn't really get a great send off. I mean, it was good, but could have been a lot better. So I gave the Seeds of Doom an 8 out of 10. Place is the Android Invasion. An underrated story, I must say, but if the flaws were avoided, this story probably would have been Tom Baker's very best stories. I like the mystery and the intrigue that the Android Invasion had, such and giving us nice scary moments from especially when the android Sarah's face actually came off, and then she was pretty much seated at the ground and she was shooting at the Doctor with a handgun. And obviously, obviously when it was revealed that Sarah Jane was actually an android, and the face falls off and you see all these mechanics and all that, I think that's probably a very memorable shot, and a memorable scene of this story as well. Everyone did a great job, and the majority of the side cast and the main cast as well, Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen, they all played their own android doubles, and I think they did a great job of that. A few problems I had was with the crowd. Was one, the crowds. I mean, they weren't at all memorable. They were just generic villains. They didn't really do much. They weren't too memorable, and they were just there. And second, my other problem was how Harry and Benton were written, and obviously Ian Marter and John Levine, they pretty much played their android doubles for most of the story. And in part 4, we actually see the real Harry and Benton, and they don't even do a whole lot, but that actually is a bit sad because they are pretty important characters. And it is even sadder when we see Benton get knocked out and we don't even know if he's alive or dead. We don't find out he survived the events of the story until the Brigadiers returned Mordrin undead, and he actually retired to become a car salesman. And if they actually got a decent goodbye scene from, it would probably make the story a lot better and more. It would probably had some more emotion to it. So I probably give that story another 8 out of 10. This is Terror of the Zygons, a magnificent story to say the least, and I love the whole Scottish feel to it. Terror of the Zygons is a very scary story, and I love how scary and creepy the Zygons are. From giving us jump scares, I guess the part 1 cliffhanger comes to mind, and pretty much being one step ahead of the Doctor and Union by pretty much spying on them, and that was pretty creepy, and it probably made them very effective villains as well. And obviously, how they were able to control the Scarison was just brilliant, man. I just really like I really like the Zygons. And I really like the scene where the Zygon double of Harry was trying to kill Sarah in the bond with a pitchfork, and then I think Sarah climbed up to higher ground, and then the Zygon was after her, and then I think as Harry was about to stab her with the thing, she quickly moves aside, and the Zygon Zygon Harry pretty much falls down to the ground and actually is impaled by something, and that was a pretty scary scene. I also liked when the Scarson actually showed up in London, even though that part was a little bit rushed, but it was still really good. The acting was very good as well, and I liked how confident Tom Baker was. Especially, I liked how his confidence grew from the popularity and the success of season 12, his first season. And my main problem I have with Tale of the Zygons was how Harry was written out. I mean, it was very abrupt. He was just like, Harry, the Doctor was just like, Harry, do you want to come with me to the TARDIS, back to London? And then Harry was like, no, and then that's just it. Even though we see him again in Android Invasion, it wasn't a very good exit for Harry, in my opinion. So it was very abrupt and didn't really carry any weight at all. So I give Terror of the Zygons a 9 out of 10. A 9.5 out of 10. In second place is The Brain of Morbius. I absolutely adored the story. I like how dark the story was, visually and thematically. Taking inspiration from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it pretty much added to the charm and the appeal of what made the Hinchcliffe era so popular. We get to see some great acting from the main cast, especially from the Fourth Doctor, and especially Elizabeth Sladen. As I mentioned before, I really liked her acting when she was blind, how she was pretty much navigating the cliff sides of Khan, and that was pretty great as well. Speaking of Khan, we were introduced to the Sisterhood of Khan, and they had a great introduction, and they don't appear in any more classic Who stories, but they do have a bit of a part to play in the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, and that's when they were pretty much involved in the 8th Doctor's regeneration and the part of Series 9 as well. And this story also introduces the possibility that the Doctor actually had previous incarnations before Hartnell, but as I mentioned in that review, in my review of this story, those could have easily been Morbius's previous regenerations. Morbius is a great villain as well. I liked how grotesque he looked, especially with how his brain was pretty much in a glass, and how he had his head was just a glass dome. No man knows if his brain was inside him. He had a mutant body, and he had a claw in one hand and Kodor's actual arm for the other, and that was pretty cool as well. And Mahendri Solon was a great villain, and I think Philip Maddox did a great job portraying him, and I really like that story. So I give The Brain of Morbius my first perfect 10 out of 10 for this season. First place, Pyramids of Mars. Woo! Another story I thoroughly enjoyed. I watched Pyramids of Mars when I was a youngster, and I've been over it ever since. This story had a lot of great moments, a great plot, incredible acting, plus an iconic villain in Sutek the Destroyer and his robot servitor mummies. It's a shame that Sutek doesn't appear in any more stories, but at the same time pretty much adds to his charm of him being one of the best one of Doctor Who villains ever. I really like the scenery and the set, especially the location filming when they were filming outside the house. It pretty much represented where the priory that the story pretty much took place, and Mars itself. There's a lot of moments I really liked in the story, especially when Sutek was was pretty much how we were introduced to Sutek, how he was basically like I am Sutek, I bring death to all those or something like that. And when the doctor actually got to him, he pretty much weakened the doctor, pretty much making him stronger. And how Sutek is so powerful, he can pretty much wipe out anyone. Even the Terminals couldn't even stop him, as the doctor even mentioned it. And I really like the Doctor's I Walk in Eternity speech in part 1. I thought that gave the fourth Doctor some gravitas to his character later. But that seemed a little topped with some humor, which I actually liked. And I also like Elizabeth Sladen's acting in this story, and I think she did very well. And I think this, and as I said before, I think this is probably one of her best performances as Sarah Jane Smith in the classic series. And obviously, this story is very dark as well. Not as dark as Seeds of Doom, but I mean, it is quite dark. I mean, we do get some very gnarly deaths, especially when Marcus Scarman came back and pretty much killed Ibrahim. I think it was, yeah, how he killed Ibrahim by just using his bare hands to touch his shoulders, and smoke was just coming out, and it was a very dark scene as well. So I give Pyramids of Mars another 10 out of 10. So to conclude, I think season 13 is another great season for Tom Baker, near perfect, and I would actually say that season 13 is actually my favorite Tom Baker season overall. Fantastic, brilliant, scary, memorable stories, great showing of the gothic element aspects that pretty much made the Philip Hinchcliffe era so iconic, and I think a good chunk of my favorite stories from the Tom Baker era actually come from this season. So I give season 13 an A+. So my next set of Doctor Who reviews will be Tom Baker's third season 14, and it starts off with The Mask of Mandragora. So thank you for watching this ranking video. Please let me know what you thought of this video and season 13 as a whole. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and please join my Discord server if you want to do so. It's in the description box below. Until then, see you later.